Oh, it's so nice to meet you, by the
You
way.
too. You too. Thank you. Yeah, me too.
Um, so I'm not gonna use your real name, but my first question is, how did you come up with your pen name?
Oh, okay. So when I first started writing, it was my first book was published in February of 2014, The Sheik and the Slave. It originally started as chapters on a blog called Literotica, and I actually still have followers from that time period. And I was working for a huge nonprofit in Santa Monica, so I couldn't publish under my name. And so my middle name is Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Nicola, and then I'm Italian. So
You're like, perfect.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the name on Literotica, so it just kind of carried over, but that's kind of how I came up with it. And I remember I was at a book festival in Newhall, California, and some guy came up to me. He's like, Nicola Italia, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. And he's like, it sounds like an Italian prostitute, and I was like, okay. So okay.
Confident, not confident.
But yeah, and most people either pronounce it Nicola or Nicola. It doesn't matter. So that's how I got it. That's how I came up
Okay,
with it.
so it's like, okay, there has to be something either like, oh, I just pulled something out of thin air or
Random.
random. Well, I mean, it is random, but it's not. I mean, it's still a
Yeah.
part of, like, who you are, which is just, not some, oh, this is my alter ego or something like that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I have a dear friend of mine, Rochelle, runs the little Bookbub, which is a small indie bookstore up here in the Antelope Valley, and she's funny because she knows all these authors, and they all have two names. She'll call them by one name, and I'm like, who's that? And she's like, oh, that's what's her face. I'm like, oh, okay. And so
Like,
everybody seems to have like Tessa Dare. She has a real, they all have different names, and it's kind of funny because who are you talking to? So,
wait,
but
do I know them?
the
Yeah,
world of pen names.
yeah. Well, and there's one erotica author, like Red Phoenix, and she always wears sunglasses or a mask and stuff, and she's like, well, that's to protect my family's identity too.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
like, it doesn't matter like what your family does. It's just romance is kind of an odd subject to write about because I mean, even if you have a clean romance, sex is going to be part of it
Yeah.
one way or
Yeah.
another. So
It's
it's just
true.
interesting.
It's true. Even when I was younger and I was a reader and I read historical, which is why I got into historical writing. But even me, I would like kind of hide the covers and it's like, why am I doing this? Because everybody, but yeah, it is one of those kind of not quasi taboo, but yeah, romance. It's one of those things. Yeah, it's interesting.
Sorry, the timer's going off. Um, uh, yeah. Well, and today I came home from the library and I had like just a stack of like romance books, and I'm just like, I'm like the point like, yeah, 15-year-old me would have been like, can I check this out? I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'm checking these out. Like the covers don't mean anything.
Yeah,
They're just crazy.
it's
Um,
true. It's true.
so why historical romance?
I I love the for me the like I'm starting number 15 right now. So 14 is about to come out and I'm starting the process of writing getting the characters and the all of that background into place for 15. And I love the historic part of it. I love the research. I love kind of delving into history. I love history itself. So for me to be able to create a story, to do the research and kind of put in some romance in there, it fills the whole void for me. I know a lot of people do really well with contemporary and people love contemporary, of course. I There would be that historic aspect that I would just totally miss.
Yeah.
So, that's why. I mean, like the things that what's really funny is when you're doing research, the things that we take for granted, it's so fun. It's just so interesting to me. Like one time I had to, oh, sorry, did you hear that? It's a car. Um, one time I had to do a research on what kind of oil lamps or what they were using, and you just think about like we turn on the lights,
Right.
but back then it's like what were they using? Oil, candlestick, and gas lamps, and just to me I just find that fascinating. So that's long answer to your question. I just love the historical part of it. It's interesting.
So how do you decide on your the time periods? Because going through your books, are they all kind of set in the Victorian era or in that area? Because the Alchemy of Night is a Victorian,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of going off of that, seeing most of your books are they kind of in that same time period? I know you have some, what is it? Oh, the plantation one and the tea one, which I'm like, okay, adding those to my list right now. So how do you choose what time periods that you want to cover?
Yeah, in fact, it's funny, Rochelle, again, the book owner, and I were just talking about this yesterday because I kind of all over the place. I think I finally kind of settled down into late Victorian because I just really love that dark, gritty period. But the Sheik and the Slave is 17, what is it, 20s or 30s, so it's way back there. And then, like you said, tea plantation is 1880s again in Sri Lanka, Ceylon. And then the Sheik's son, which is the son of the first book, he's right before the what do you call it, the French Revolution. And so those are really old. And then I just did Sea of Revenge, which was right after Alchemy, and that was going back again to it's called the golden age of piracy. She's a pirate, and so they're kind of all over the place. But what I'm doing right now with 15 is I'm going to start, it's not a series, but it's going to continuing the character from he was briefly introduced in Alchemy. He was a detective, and he's the main character in 14. and now and I know people love series, and we shied away from them, but it's nice that you have kind of this core character that's doing his thing or her thing, and they're kind of moving through each book. So I'm giving it a try. You always try one thing once, and then so that's kind of how I'm coming into the late Victorian era now. And so this book will be 1881, and Of Night and Dark Obscurity, which was my 14, that was 1880. So dark, late Victorian era, 8 years before Jack the Ripper and all of that. So
yeah, so it's just kind of, I wonder how this is. Just kind of hey, 1700 sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, and there's no reason.
I appreciate everything.
Exactly. There's no rhyme or reason. No.
Yeah, and the more I read historical romance, the more I appreciate our underwear today.
Oh, I know.
And the fact that we don't need someone helping us into it.
It's crazy. There was a woman, I don't know if you've ever seen it on YouTube. There was a woman who she's a costumer or something, and she shows how women would go to the restroom. And I'm thinking, even if you did have those slits in the pantaloons or whatever, you still got so much layers, and it's so dirty. And I think I read they bathed once a week, or it was not a good time.
And oils and it just makes me hug my shampoo.
Yeah. Running water.
Whenever I want, I don't have to wait for someone to heat water up. And
and that's funny. In the book I just did, in 14, he's buying, the detective is buying a house. And the one thing that they call them estate agents, the one thing that they're talking about to entice him to buy it is, look at this new thing we've got in indoor plumbing. And I was just thinking, and I did research on it. It was just coming into play. And then by, of course, the turn of the century, if you were in a cosmopolitan city, you had it. Obviously, we're not talking about smaller cities and towns, but they would have had it by then. But anyways, that was the selling point of the house.
It blows my mind. As much as I love history, it's still just anytime I read them, just like, oh my gosh, those poor people.
Yeah, women especially, I think, because they had a lot more going on, and just like even like simple like childbirth. I mean, what was it like? One in how many women died in childbirth? I mean, serious numbers. So,
Or having that child live past like
exactly.
5.
Yeah.
If you make it to age 5, you're good for the rest of your life.
Yeah, in fact, I think there was one period of time, I don't think it was Victorian era, but where they didn't even name the children for like, I think it was 6 months or something, because there was such a high infant mortality rate. So, yeah.
That's just mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's crazy.
So, for your research, what kind of research, like, what is your research process? How do you do research? Internet, books, all the above?
Yeah, I do a lot of like right now I'm doing a lot of I do read. I have a book that I bought a while ago about the it was quite a helpful book. It was the hierarchy of servants in the home. And so, because I write a lot about like the footman, the butler, the maid, the kitchen, you want to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I'm sure everybody knows now because Downton Abbey, but back in the day. So a little bit of reading, a lot of research online. There's like a Victorian web, something that I always go to. And I do a lot of YouTube videos. Like I've been watching a lot of workhouse because my book's going to be set in a Victorian workhouse. And so a lot of research, even just kind of getting a sense of it. Like I remember when I did the tea plantation, I've never been to Ceylon, which is Sri Lanka now. And so I did a lot of videos to get a sense of the greenery. They have a lot of tea obviously there, and kind of what the people would wear. And I always try to really keep that historic accuracy. I mean, obviously I'll take my creative license, but I'm not going to put, the Queen Victoria in like, 1700s, you try to keep a little bit of that, give and take, but I do try to stay pretty accurate. And if I don't, I usually put it in my author's note. But that's kind of what I do, is a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of YouTube videos. I love YouTube. It's so amazing what you can find there. I just amazing. And again, whenever I start focusing on the time period and the places, then I start researching on that. So like I said, right now it's a lot of workhouse. When I was doing the Sea of Revenge, I was doing a lot of like looking at pirates, how they were, because there were a couple of female pirates. People always forget that. There were, I think, 3 or 4 of them with the guys. And so doing a lot of research on like the Nassau, which is where their places was in the Bahamas, and just really trying to get a good take on it. And so I can convey that to the readers.
Yeah, well, piracy that's a whole other
it is
realm of itself.
Yes, it is.
Because you have the fight between every other pirate within the crown, and then you have your Asian pirates, which those are ruthless. I mean, no,
there was a lot going on that I think, and in my book, the hero of the book was a privateer, and a lot of people don't know that there were people that were sanctioned by the crown that did go and basically were pirates, but they had like the stamp of approval. So here's my gold card. But and so that was interesting too, because even though I knew that existed, I think Francis Drake and those kinds of guys were an example, but there were people that were sanctioned, and they were out doing their thing, and they were just a little better than pirates, but they had their seal of approval.
They got paid to do it legally.
Yeah, they did.
So how long does it typically take you to do a research for a book? So I finished the Of Night and Dark Obscurity couple weeks ago, and it went to the editor and it went to the beta reader. So right now I've been doing my research for number 15. So it's been about
probably about 2 weeks. And I don't sit here like, 9 to 5 or, full day of research. But I do put in a couple hours a day, really kind of, like I said, doing my videos and writing down. I still, even though, we're all modern women, I still kind of write because I just like to have kind of see it. And so, so I know I saw that. I was like, so it's for me, it keeps it fresh. So like I can just turn to the page and like I have it right here and I can turn to the page and be like, oh, okay, that's what was going on. Like the workhouses had a staff, they had a matron, a master, a chaplain, a doctor, all of that. And so for me, I just kind of, oh, okay, that's where I'm going with that. And so it really just depends, a couple of weeks, and then I start writing, and then I'll always go back. So like anytime I'm writing, I've always got the, the browser open and got to, switch over and look that up. And if I can't do it right then, I'll highlight it and go back to it.
So it's a research while writing kind of process.
Yeah, always. Because there's always something that 9 times out of 10, I'll be writing, something will come up and I'll be like, what do I do with that one or something like that? And I've got to, research it. A really good example is when I put my character someplace, there was so much going on in the late Victorian era. You got to research, were they at Covent Garden? Were they going to the Victoria and Albert Museum? Where were they? And I'm not from London, so I've got to go and research and see, what was going on. And again, I try to be, try to put the reader where I'm going. So I want to really make it as, authentic and give it that real bite of history.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever gone on a literary pilgrimage for ideas or for research or anything like that?
I haven't. I've been thinking about going. I have a dear friend in right outside of London, so I've been thinking about going in the next couple of months. Mm-hmm. I went to Europe when I was 20, so I've been to Europe, and I loved it. I mean, it's great. I enjoyed it a lot. I love traveling. I've traveled to China and to the Central America, so I have traveled a little bit, but not specifically for like a. No, but like I said, I've been thinking about it because especially with this series, I really want to make it very authentic. Mm-hmm. And so I really have been thinking, like you can look up pictures, you can look up videos, but really being there, I think gives you that real intense, experience to convey to your readers.
So you said that you don't you don't spend all day doing research, but
no.
You about how many hours do you write a day, or do you just do kind of like a word count per day?
I do. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I do a word count. So I've read so many different things when I first was starting out, and I really wanted to keep on, because I'm not one of those writers. Well, let me back up a little bit. I'm not one of those writers that will write and then go back and re-edit. I don't do that. I do like the full thing, stop, and then I do a massive rewrite because I think, knowing me, it would never be finished. And it would be the same chapter. It would be the same chapter for years. So for me, I have a word count of 1,500 words a day. Okay. And I also, once I start writing, and I could show you, but you probably wouldn't be interested. It's I actually keep a complete Excel spreadsheet. Oh, and wow. So what I do is my normal hit for an historic romance is 80,000. Okay. So what I'll do is it usually takes about, I think I'm guessing about a month and a half for an 80,000 words if you're doing 1,500 a day.
That was like my next question was like, okay, like,
so that's.
So how long is 80,000 words? Is that
80,000 is about like 320, I think. And again, I'm just giving you some estimations. I think if you're talking about like a hardcover, regular paperback, that I think that's about 320, somewhere around there. And that's a standard. Usually historic romances are like, I think 70 to 90 or 60 to 80, somewhere around there. And that's just a standard, like a Lisa Kleypas, Julia Quinn, Tessa Dare. like a standard paperback. And so that's exactly what I do. So when I start, I'll do 1,500 a day. And then I do like, like let's just say I'm starting on December 1st, I'll do the whole Excel spreadsheet for a month and a half. And then I hit that. So every day I'm going into and I'm updating it. So I'm staying on track, because knowing me as well, if I didn't give myself some sort of, I don't have to write today. And then a week goes by. and then you're like, where's that novel 15? Well, somebody's got to write it.
So who sets your deadlines? Do you set your deadlines for like your writing, your editors, anything?
Yeah, so because I'm a self-published, I'm an indie writer, I set everything, but I have kind of my team in place. So what happens is I'll do my book, and then it goes to my editor after I'm done. Well, let me go back, because I do my book and then I do that massive rewrite I told you about. So I'll go through, I'll clean it up, and that can take 2 weeks too, just doing that, because that's my least favorite part. I always like kind of put it away and I'm like, oh God, I got to get to it. And so I'll do the massive rewrite, and then it goes to my editor, and then she takes about a week or 2 weeks. And then we go back and forth if she has any changes. And then once she and I agree that it's done, then it goes to the beta readers. And beta readers are basically people that like your work, and they're basically fans. And I have at any given time like 3 to 5. And their job is to go through it, look for accuracy and continuity, and then it's done. And then once it's done, I format it, and then it goes to Amazon. And during this whole time, I have a graphic designer who works on the cover, and he and I go back and forth too. And that's a whole issue in itself, because sometimes we disagree, and it's like a whole it's a whole thing.
So off your cover art, 'cause, for some reason I didn't write anything down about cover art, but like I'm obsessed with cover art. How do you like picture, like when you come up with your title, which I'm sure is the whole process, you're like, this is how I want this is how I want it to look.
Yes.
Is that how
it's funny you should say that, because there's some books where like literally I'm like, oh, this is the name of it, like The Tea Plantation. Okay, no brainer, right? And then there are some, there was one book called The Reign of Love and Chaos, which is I think number 4. It took me forever. And it was written during the French Revolution's The Reign of Terror, which is, if you know about the French Revolution, that was when everybody was losing their head. And so I thought, oh, The Reign of Love and Chaos, but it took me forever to come up with that. And so you're right, that sometimes can be a whole process. And then with the cover art, what usually happens is, because I'm an indie, I don't have the luxury of like working with a lot of the traditional. They have their own models, and they do their own kind of cover art. For me, it's what's called stock art. And it's like, if you've ever heard of like Shutterstock or iStock or any of that. So we use that kind of pictures. And then what usually happens is, because I always have the picture in my head, like you said, I will go on there and start looking for pictures. And so I'll pick one, I'll send it to him, the designer. I'll be like, okay, this is what I want. And then we kind of, because we've been doing it since 2014, we kind of have a really good, back and forth, and he'll send me stuff and I'll be like, that sucks, and try again. And so that's funny. And so then we go back and forth, and then finally, like right now, the cover's almost done for 14. And so it's looking pretty good. And then once that happens, and that's on top of the manuscript, and then that gets put into Amazon.
If you could go back and change any of your covers, would you?
Yes, there's already one I hate. And I've been asking my graphic designer, please redo it. And he just doesn't listen to me. But it's the Three Graces, and it's only because it's very modern looking. And the Three Graces was California when it was a Mexican territory, and it doesn't look anything like that.
That's like, I was looking through it, I was like, wait, this doesn't look like a historical romance.
Yeah, see, exactly. And so I have a picture I picked out years ago, literally, and I've been asking him to redo it, and that's on my list of things to do. But that would be one. And maybe just update, like just give some spunk to some other ones, but nothing as bad as Grace's. I really don't like that thing. And there's like a horse, and I'm just like, oh, this is so ugly. I just hate it.
At least there's only like one though.
Yeah, that one I really detest it.
Because I feel like cover art should be kind of updated throughout the years,
Oh, even like well-known authors update their covers if they've had like something that was out like 10, 15 years ago. I've seen really like well-known authors like even like I think Stephen King has updated his and stuff like that. So it's happens, people.
It's how you can go, oh, this is a cool new book. You're like, wait, this book was written 20 years ago?
This 20-year-old book.
Okay, so you said it takes about a month and a half for your first draft.
Yeah.
So what is the hardest scenes to write, especially for historical romance?
Yeah.
Is it all the historical accuracies or?
No, the hardest for me, and I think that's why I'm getting more into historical mystery, which is what Fit 14 is. It's the sex scenes. I don't like writing them. In fact, one time I was so not into writing them that I put like sex all in caps and just left it and went back. I can't deal with it today. No members, nothing. And so, they're and it's not like I'm prude or anything, because you can go back to number one and people either hate it or love the Sheik and the Slave, and it's sexual, but whatever. For me, it gets to the point where sometimes I'm just not in the mood, and sometimes it's even like with 14, I actually took one out because I didn't think the book was going that way. Okay. And so it wasn't like, oh, I don't want to do any sex. It was kind of, in my opinion, it was taking away from the story.
Right.
But I don't like, they're kind of difficult to write.
Well, and I mean, sex scenes, they have to like, reading it, and you're like, okay, yep, this makes sense where this is going. And then sometimes you're like, wait, they're having sex now? Like, where did that come from?
Like, it has to add to the story, right? Like, yeah, just the gratuitous sex scene thrown in for no purpose whatsoever.
So what has been the hardest scene to write ever, like for any of your books?
Probably there's one book that I have out, and it doesn't sell very well, and it's called the Savannah Stargazer, and it's a Civil War romance book, and there was a lot of obviously Civil War. There was a lot of slavery scenes and a lot of master and slave, and just a lot of things that for me as a modern woman, it was hard to write because I've never experienced it, and it was just difficult. And so that was kind of a hard book. And it was just kind of, a little difficult. There was a couple scenes, and there was one scene where there's a character I created, and I really liked her. She's an older Black woman who has a lot of influence on the main guy character, who becomes an abolitionist, which was anti-slavery, but she was like whipped and her back, it was just, it was kind of uncomfortable to write. But I had a good story. And so I had always wanted to write a Civil War, and I think it's book 7 or 8, or I'm not sure, but that's probably the one that really was kind of uncomfortable, like, because it's just, it's not a great part of our history, and it's a very difficult thing to write about, people beating other people and treating them like property.
Well, and I feel like the Civil War is just one of those things where you either obsessed about it or you're like, I'm good.
Yeah.
What I wanted to learn in high school, I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah. So obviously you're a female. What is the most difficult thing about writing for a male character? Like,
I think with writing for a male character, you have to really I think, toe that line of not being too, like, everybody likes that alpha male, which in my first book, if you haven't read it, he's the Sheik, and he's like super alpha male, like, what I want, I get, and, and she's what I want. and also going to like too soft and effeminate, meaning they're kind of like the people kind of are, they're run roughshod over or something like that. You gotta do that fine line. You don't want people to be like, oh, whoa, your male character is kind of an a-hole. And so I think doing that fine line is important, and also telling that, again, that good story, the good romance of two people coming together. So I think that's the line you got to walk, and sometimes it can be hard, because you do want that tough guy that knows it all, but also I think looking back, some of my characters, especially Muhammad, he's pretty, what he wants he gets. So, but people love that story too. I mean, they either hate it or love it. So.
Do you think it's hard, though, to write for a male character, like in a romance book? Because that women like the alphas, but you also know that, like, in real life, like, alpha males are just, like, complete assholes. And, like, women actually don't like them in real life. Yeah.
It's true. That's exactly what I'm saying. And I think that's why I have become a little bit, because if you look at, like, the Sheik and the Slave and Muhammad, and you look at, like, Detective Inspector Pierce, my number 14, they're completely different guys. I mean, Muhammad's like this, like I said, I want her and she's the one I want. And then Detective Inspector is like, this educated second son of an earl trying to find the killer of somebody. And, so yeah, I think you're right that you do have to find that balance and really, really kind of soften the tone a bit. But people do like the alpha males, though, don't they? Because, I mean,
it's just like, oh.
They do. I mean, you see those.
It's on the story, too, though. I mean,
yeah.
So what does literary success look like to you?
It's funny you should ask that, because I've been thinking about that lately. And at about to be number 15, which is what I'm writing now, I have been thinking a lot. And I think, I've built up my little core group. I have my fans that really, really follow me. They like my work. Some of them have followed me since my Literotica days, which, that was like 2012. But I would like to get to that next level, only because I want more people to discover me. And it's not so much like fame and fortune, because, that's not something, well, maybe the fame, maybe the fortune, but, but I think for me, I want to kind of be at that next level. And so when you say, what does it look like? People know me, people enjoy my work. I think that's most important. When I think about what it means to be a writer, if I just sat down on my computer and type out my book and hit save and nobody ever sees it, well, that's not anything. But when people contact me, or people, see me at events and they're like, oh, I love your stuff, that's awesome. Like, to me, the first time that happened, I was like, really? That's so cool. Somebody, like somebody came up to me and they're like, I love the Sheik and the Slave. I was like, really? So that's to me is super cool. I mean, that to me is just the best. I remember when I first came out with the Sheik and the Slave, I had a blog, and somebody typed me a message, and they were like, they're like, I hate you. I'm at the gym, and all I can think about is Cat and Muhammad. And I was like, that's it. That doesn't get any better than that. That was so cool.
When your characters get like stuck in people's heads, you're just obsessed about it. You're like, oh, I can't believe her. Yeah,
that was awesome. So that to me is really what I want, is people to just discover me.
Mm-hmm. So how did publishing your first book change your writing process?
I think what happened with the Sheik and the Slave is, like I had mentioned before, it was on a blog, and it was chapters on a blog, and I had a big following. I got romance of the month or something, and it was rated hot, all these things. And I had, I think 13 or 14 chapters, and the fans were like really stalkerish. They were like, finish it. And I was like, oh, you better calm down. And
I'm not doing it.
I'm just for that. I'm not doing it. And a dear friend of mine said, why don't you just finish it and turn it into a book? And this was like, I mean, I know some people have been on Amazon for a long time, but this was 2013. And so still, this was in the beginning of like the indie stage. And so, that's exactly what I did. I took off 2 weeks from work. I was at the nonprofit, and I put all the chapters together, and I put a beginning because it really wasn't like set up right. And then I finished it. And I published it in February of 2014. And so from there, that really started because it did well. I was really surprised. I did really well. And Amazon was much nicer than it was now because you could make really good money with one book. I mean, I did really well in the beginning, and I still do well, but with one book, I mean, I did great. And so what happened is it kind of started a process for me of putting everybody together, like I said. So now I have so I write the book, and I have like a process of how many words, and then I have my editor, my beta, my graphics. So it really started like me getting together my group, because it's just me, I'm just an indie. And so I have to do this all on my own, and I have to have a process because I need the book to get out there. So I can't just like finish it and be like, oh, there, it's done. Well, no, I mean, I have to edit it. And I'm very particular that my books aren't going out unless they're edited, beta read, and have a good cover, because to me, people are spending money on me. Mm-hmm. And I want to give them a good product. To me, that's important. I want that quality. I don't want people to write on a review, it looks like it needs an editor, that like scares me. So that's kind of how the first book started everything else.
Okay. So what is the best money you've ever spent as a writer?
Oh, like with advertising or just anything?
Anything.
It would probably be Bookbub. Bookbub is, if you're familiar with Bookbub, it's the advertising for writers, and they have a really good business model because the people that subscribe, like if you're a reader, you don't pay anything, mm-hmm. but the authors have to pay to get on, to get into to listings. And I've done them about 10 times over since 2014, and I always do really well. I get reviews, I get new people, readers. I get on Bookbub, you can actually follow me. So I think I have like 700 followers just there. So they've been really good to me. And I try to do them because they have to accept you. I try to do them a couple times a year, and most of the time I can do them a couple times a year, and they're just great. I mean, it's so for the money, because it's a little pricey. For the money, it's absolutely worth it. I always tell everybody, if you can get accepted, you should do it, because like I said, it's a little pricey, but very much worth it.
Sweet. Yeah, advertising is a bitch.
Yeah.
It's these days.
It is. And it's oversaturation. It's oversaturation, because I know people that have done Goodreads, but there's so many, so much there. There's a website called Smart. I don't know if you've heard of it. Is it Smart Bitches something books? Trashy books. Smart Bitches Trashy Books, and they're good too. But again, it's so much books that how do you stand out? With 100 books. So they're there. It's just you got to find your little. Your niche. Yeah, Goodreads is a little overwhelming sometimes for anything. Like, I have to like walk away, and my husband's like, "You on Goodreads?" I'm like, "Yes." I'm like, I can't. I'm like, there's too much. It is. It's a lot going on, and of course now they're owned by Amazon, so they're an Amazon entity. And even with them, I was looking at doing giveaways where before the giveaways were free. They're not free anymore. Now it costs like $119. And again, I'm not dissing that. It's just now you've got to spend more where it used to be free. So
right, yeah, now because it's just picking and choosing where you want to run your things. And yeah, and I guess like Facebook is a dying thing. Like
that's what they say.
You use Facebook, and I'm like, okay. and like Instagram is where it's at, but now Instagram and then it's Twitter. I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, you can't keep up. I know, it's true. Like, yeah, I've been on Facebook forever, and now they're like, oh, the young people hate it because their mother's on it. I'm like, when did I become a mom?
You're like, wait, what?
It's fine. It's fine.
I don't know. I'm like, I get Facebook. I don't get Twitter. And
I don't either. I've never had much luck with Twitter, but I recently joined Instagram, and mostly it's funny because I think that's how you and I connected. It's funny. I'll post all these pictures. The pictures that gets the most likes are my dog Pippa. So whatever. I know you have a dog too, but I always laugh at that.
I got a thing that's like the picture I posted of my beagles, like this post is doing 80% better. I'm like,
exactly. It's like Pippa.
So your 14th book is coming out.
Yes.
I'm excited. What can we expect from it?
Well, this, like I said, is a little bit of a departure. So instead of being historic romance, it's historic mystery. And if you read Alchemy of Night, there was a detective who made a small little, cameo in it, so to speak, or a little part. And he's
a huge part of it, though.
Yeah, that's true. Because he solves he solves it. But he's the main character in this, and basically it's 1880s London, and there have been two women that have been murdered, and he is trying to find out who the murderer is. And when the third victim comes up, her sister he comes in contact with her because she's, it's the family of the victim. She's the heroine. And so she's kind of, thrust into this world, and he's trying to find, this murder in this dark, opium dens and all this like ugly Victorian era. And there's so much going on in like late Victorian era. It's like, ew, it was so dirty and
so dirty.
It was
fantastic at the same time.
So I think you'll find, a good story. I hope to hold your interest. And again, this detective inspector, Chief Detective Inspector Pierce, is going to be the hero, not the hero, but he's going to have a next book. And so I'm starting a series. Okay. And so I'm hoping this is, going to be something that people like. Like I said, it's a little bit of a departure. There is romance because
like
Val,
mystery romance kind of.
Yeah. And the romance, like I said, I took that sex scene out because, I was like, why is this here? I'm like, they're like going through all this stuff, and now it's just like wham bam. Like, no, I'm gonna take that out. So hopefully nobody will, get mad at that. But it's still building a relationship, which doesn't always need to be sexual.
No.
So, but I'm hoping people will like this change because it is a little bit of a change. But if you've read Alchemy, it's a lot like Alchemy because Alchemy wasn't very sexual either.
No. So. No, yeah, and Alchemy is like the perfect, like murder mystery romance, and it's just, oh my god, it like, I don't care for Millie, but I'm just like, that's no way to kill somebody. It's so terrible, but you're like, but she's so annoying. And
yeah, I made her. It's funny because somebody asked me once what my favorite kind of character is, and I remember a famous author saying this too. I don't know who it was. I don't think it was Agatha, but it's creating the bad characters, like the mean ones, because you can just go all out. Like did you read Love in the Valley of the Kings?
Not yet.
It's exactly like it sounds. It's a female archaeologist who goes and she discovers an intact tomb with her father, who's also an archaeologist. But anyways, there's kind of like a group that's all there that are all like diggers and stuff like that. And there's this wife, her name is Vesta. She's an older woman, and she's the wife of one of the other guys who everybody loves. And she's just so mean, and she's really racist because the main guy is half Egyptian, half British.
Okay.
And so she just says these awful things, and she's just so mean. And people are like, I hated her. And I was like, well, you were supposed to hate her. She's evil.
Thank you. I did my job.
But it's the same with Millie, like, and the mom was just so like annoying, and you're just like, why? But you have to, I found that those kind of characters also create kind of a layer and depth, because if everybody's kind of nice and you know, it's kind of boring, right? But if you throw in one of those like evil, obnoxious people, you're like, oh.
Well, especially if they're like a parental character, and then you can kind of like understand, you know, why your hero or heroine are the way
I
they
like that.
are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
So okay, so you already said that you edited out a sex scene for 14.
Yes.
Okay, so for Alchemy of Night, did you edit anything out that you kind of wish you wouldn't have? Or like took something out, you're like, wait, maybe I should have put that in, or
No, I for the most part, when especially like, because when I do my mass edit, I just kind of clean up a lot of stuff. I don't ever do like mass rewrites. Usually that happens when it goes to my editor, and I have the capability and the, you know, I can say, oh, no, I'm not going to do that, because sometimes she would ask for, you know, major things. And for Alchemy, no, I pretty much, it was a pretty smooth sailing with that one. There's been a couple books where I was like, whoa, they were so easy to write, and then a couple of them are like, oh geez, headaches, you know. So it really depends, but Alchemy was pretty smooth, I mean, in the editing process.
So do you believe in writer's block?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think it's necessarily like how people think it is. I think you just kind of get stuck. It's not like, you know, it's not like the end of the world. What I usually do, and this always works for me, is I'll start bouncing ideas off people. Like I'll tell them the story, and I'll be like this happened to me with the Sheik. I was like literally almost at the end, and I didn't know how to end it.
Oh.
And so I went to my dear friend and I was like, this is the story. This is what's going on. Help me end it. And so he was like, oh, okay. And then we talked through it, and he's like, well, what about this? Well, what about this? And that always helps. I mean, that's the best. I mean, whatever works for you, but that always works for me is bouncing ideas off people.
Yeah, I can't imagine like you get to like your last chapter, you're like, okay, I got to wrap this up. And you're like,
awful.
How do I do that?
What do I do with them?
Continue forever.
What do I do with them?
You're like, this can't be a 50,000 page book.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Why not? It's a novella now with no ending. Yeah. I totally feel for those people. I really do, because it is frustrating, but I think everybody finds their way. Some people write it out. Some people, you know, I mean, I've heard stories about what other writers do, but that works for me. So, you know, whatever works for other people, you know. But bouncing off ideas has always worked.
Well, and that's a great piece of like advice too for like any writer too, is just talk to somebody that, you know, they may just sit there and it's easier to just talk. I mean, I talk to myself, like I have my husband like sitting in front of me like, okay, I need it. And I do that. I like bounce ideas, but it's like one-sided. I'm just like, wait, if I do this, then I can do this. He's like, okay.
Yeah, and the good thing is when you do bounce off ideas, you've been living with these characters for forever, right? So when you tell somebody else, they may see something that you haven't thought of, you didn't see. And so that's why I like it, because it is kind of taking yourself out of it and being like, okay, well, here's the story. What do you think? And they're like, oh, okay. So like I said, that works for me. So.
So what is one piece of advice someone gave you before you published your first book?
Just to write and to keep writing. Because I remember when I first did The Sheik and the Slave, and it happens every book I finish, it goes off to the editor, and I'm like, this is the worst book ever. And it's like, yeah, it's like so dramatic. You're so dramatic. And people, and I've had many people say, just keep writing. Because, you know, the more you have, you know, in your, what do they call it? The backlog or whatever they call it. It's just more books that are behind you that strengthen your, you know, your position as an indie, because when somebody finds you and they like you, well, what are they going to do? They're going to start reading all your other books.
Right.
And so that's the advice that I was given. Just keep writing.
Keep writing.
Yeah.
So what is your piece of advice to writers, wannabe writers, new writers, especially with the National Novel Writing
For November.
I know, like my email, like every day is just like 3 more emails with this, and it's like, okay, I get it. November's coming up.
Yep, it's coming.
What is like your one piece of advice for writers?
Probably just to, kind of get it out there, just, if some people do the outline, some people just kind of write. I have a very basic outline because that just works for me. But I would kind of give the same advice I got, which is, to write it. Yeah, because I know a lot of people get scared. I know a lot of people are like, well, what if it sucks? Or what if nobody reads it? Well, yeah, but if that's your dream and you want to write, I'd say go for it. I mean, what's the worst? Nobody buys it. Okay, nobody buys it. I mean, but at least, yeah. But I mean, and you just never know what resonates with one person. I mean, it's a very creative, kind of wheel, and to me, I love the process of like what I'm doing right now, where I come up with the characters and I'm kind of giving them their little shape, and I'm kind of setting the tone, and I'm getting in the mood with the videos. I love this part, and so for me, this is the best part. Then when I start writing it, they come to life. And I would never tell anybody, oh no, don't do it. I say go for it,
So do you read a lot, not just for research, but do you try to read like,
I don't read much romance anymore, because I find that if I do, it kind of taints me, and not in a bad way or a good way. It starts to kind of get in my head. So what I normally read is a lot of historical fiction, which I didn't write much of. And I'm talking like Philippa Gregory kind of things, like the White Queen and all of that stuff. I'm a huge, like Tudor and all of the queens, so I love that kind of stuff. So I do try to read, but I definitely don't read as much as I used to. I actually used to keep a log of my books, because my teacher told me years ago, she's like, oh, keep a log. I was like, okay. And I used to go through like 2-3 books a month, which I know for book people, that's not that much, but I used to read a lot, and I probably read one maybe every 2 months now. So I'm definitely not as I used to be. I know.
Have you ever had like reader's block though, where you just like aren't interested in reading because you're so immersed in your
yeah. I think that's what plays into it. But I have read, and I totally believe this, that when you're reading really good reader, or when you're reading really good writers, your writing increases and it gets better. So I've found that to be true. I used to read, I forget her name, but she used to write a lot of Henry VIII stuff. I forget her name. Alison Weir. And I would find that when I read her, my writing got better too, because she's so eloquent and it's so, educated, it's just really on par. And so I think that's kind of in the back of your mind too. You're like, oh, should I read? Because I don't want it to, but again, I think I just tend not to read that much. And I'm kind of picky too. So I don't know.
Well, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to know these days because there are so many books.
They are.
And especially with like, it's fantastic. Like I can only think of really Amazon is doing for independent writers.
Yeah. I agree.
But there are so many. There's so many in any genre, not just romance, but like true crime and like, because like that's just a huge theme too right now.
Yeah.
True crime, and then I love true crime. So I'm just like, oh, a murder mystery romance? Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And there's a lot of podcasts too, like on YouTube. There's like your true crime. There's 2 women I follow, and the research they do is amazing. I mean, it's impressive.
It's very
impressive.
impressive. So just to kind of finish up, what are you currently are you reading anything now or just
I
research?
I am. I'm reading The Last Tudor Queen by Philippa Gregory, and like I said, I like her, and I'm working on 14. So I'm like I said, I'm sorry, excuse me, 14's done. I'm working on 15, and 15 is a continuation of Mr. Pierce, the detective, and it's going to take place in a Victorian workhouse, and there's going to be a murder, and there's going to be a teacher that's going to, play into it. And so, yeah. So,
Are you, what are you currently watching? Are you watching anything?
oh, I watch a lot of what I read. I really enjoy like all sorts of British stuff. And I'm trying to think of what I just finished watching because I was on a Facebook page and they were talking about all the things that are coming up. So I'm trying to think, but and plus Halloween. I love Halloween, so I've been watching a lot of like old stuff. I was watching the old Dark House or something with Boris Karloff. I'm a I'm a huge like old black and white kind of horror films. So yeah, I was watching The Haunting the other day. The Haunting. Oh, and I listened to a lot of Agatha Christie on the YouTube because a lot of people post. So I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan.
Are you listening to, do you have like a playlist at all that you like listen to while you write?
Yeah, I always have to have quiet. I can't. I mean, I always have to have music with no lyric words because I sing everything, so I'll sing it. So
Like,
normally
just have a karaoke session instead of writing.
so normally if I'm writing, like I know with and it's always weird because it correlates to what the time period is. So I know when I was doing this last novel, I was listening to like Henry Purcell. He was a composer, and Debussy, which is a little bit later, but like stuff like that. Chopin, and
Like,
then like yeah, and then I remember when I was doing like the French Revolution and stuff, I was listening to Bach or Beethoven. It's like whatever. It's so odd.
just put on the Les Mis soundtrack.
Exactly. So yeah, I do listen. It just has to be no lyrics, no lyrics. Yeah, because I won't get anything done.
Okay, so when does book 14 come out?
Oh, October 28th.
Okay.
Of
like,
Night and Dark Obscurity.
and that's like
But it's pre-order right now.
Okay.
So you can pre-order it right now, and I'm like I said, no cover yet, but I will be nagging my graphic designer to hurry up and finish it. I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited because, like I said, it's a little bit different, but I think from what I've heard so far, the beta readers like it, and so it's something different. You always, I've done a lot of different kind of periods and stuff, so I hope this is something people like because I enjoyed it. So
I mean, and really, if you enjoy writing it, I think your readers will hopefully see that. I mean,
I hope so.
Not, it's not just, oh, here's another book for you. It's kind of weird. I kind of liked it,
I hated writing it, but here you go. No.
I needed book 14 to come out to get to book 15.
Yeah, that would be kind of sad, right? Like, oh God, here it is. Buy it. No.
Just wait for book 15. Okay. Well, where can people find you? Do you have a website? I know you're on Instagram.
Yep. Yeah, my Nicola Italia website. So Nicola and then Italia, Italia, and then Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So I try to maintain, presence. Not so much on Twitter, but Facebook and Instagram, and then and I do post if I have events because I work a lot with the independent bookstore up here in the AV. She hosts a lot of events. I think I'm doing something next Sunday, so I always post it. And people come by and say hi.
And is that all in LA?
Yeah, so it's the Antelope Valley, and it's Little Bookbub. She's in she's one of the last independent bookstores up here. She I think she told me when she first started 20 years ago there was like 17 independent bookstores. Now it's just her. I'm blown away by that. I find that amazing.
It's heartbreaking though.
I know. There used to be this one bookstore I used to go to in where I grew up in the valley, and you could get like these little paperback romances for like $1. They were all, used. And yeah, and little by little everything went out of business. So
well, thank you for talking.
Oh, my pleasure. I was so stoked.
This is exciting. I hope you come back on because I will be devouring number 14.
Oh yeah, no, 14. Like I said, I'd love to hear your opinion because it's a little bit of a departure, but I think it's going to be a good departure because mystery has always been a passion of mine. So I always think that comes out in the books. So I'm crossing my fingers that people like it, and then 15 will be very similar. So it's going to be the same kind of carry through. So totally excited.
And you said you've kind of started writing 15 already.
I've been doing the research and I've almost begun because I'm almost ready with like the concept and how I want to, because I do a brief outline. So once I start doing that brief outline and I know where I'm going, because that's the worst thing, because the kind of writer I am, I usually get stuck somewhere in the middle. I'm like, oh my God, what do I do with these people? But I'm doing.
And now you kiss.
and they get together and they marry, and so I'm getting better at that because that's the worst thing that can happen to a writer. You get stuck in the middle. So for me, I'm doing a bigger, better outline, and so I'm probably going to start writing in the next week. I think because I'd like to get it. Yeah, I'd like to get it started, and I'm getting very excited about it. So
that's exciting.
This is my favorite part of the book is when you get all your characters together, and then you're like, okay, let's see what you can do. So
well, good luck on the writing.
Thank you, and thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, me too. Yeah, I will send you some social media stuff.
Okay, cool.
When I put it together, probably tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, and if you need any other pictures or anything, let me know. Like I said, I sent you what I thought you might like, but if you need anything else, just ask and I'll send it to you.
All right. Oh, I have to ask, are you going to do a sneak peek of your cover when you do get it?
Oh yeah, it's already I already put it on Instagram. She's gonna it's a woman in kind of like a pink cape. And then there's a dark, so that's it, but it needs to be a little bit tweaked, and then the title and the thing put on it. But yeah, I'm hopefully, like I said, gonna have it because it's got to be into Amazon in a couple days. So hopefully I'll have it within the next maybe Monday or Tuesday. I think Monday. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I had a really good time.
Yeah. Okay. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.